You got a resolution to that? What do you
I
want
wasn't here, so am I allowed to?
to?
Resolution, I wasn't at the meeting, so.
You're allowed to, you read the meeting.
Yes. I read.
We got a resolution,
It's adoption.
seconded,
Second.
adopted. Next item on the agenda is the election of officers. We have three excellent officers who have been involved with the corporation for combined, well, at least 40, 50 years.
Long time.
Yeah. I said combined. So Rob Cole, Executive Vice President, General Secretary, Counsel, Loida, Dia Jesus, Vice President, and Jorge Ortiz, Vice President, Treasurer. So we get a motion to that, please?
So move. Second.
Seconded, so done. Third item on the agenda is approval of the 2023 measurement report. We've had this going back every year, this state requirement.
Yes.
And I think the most important thing is basically the mission statement of the corporation. Are we doing, supposed to do the mission is to assist the United Nations in its real estate needs. We have other rights, the city calls upon us with studies or any other area, it's in the third tab. If anyone has any questions, this measurement report. We move it for adoption. So move. Item number 4 is a finance committee report discussion. So we can call, we go around the room at least, everyone introduce each other who's here. Why don't we start with you?
Internal construction. Wayne Manley, Cushman, Wakefield. Ben Herbst, Goldman Sachs. Rob Schubert, UNDC.
Andy?
Andy Shinoy, just a brief about me. I served 4 governors of New York State, served multiple boards, and I was also an advisor to Governor Pataki on South Asian affairs, both Republican and Democrats. Currently, I am a CEO of an IT consulting company, partnering with Google and IBM.
That means if any of us needs to know
It's
anything,
a success story of an average person.
if any of us need to know something about life, we should call upon you. That's for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Chuck,
Chuck Mason, Forsyth Street.
Bob,
Rob Cole, UNDC.
George Klein, Chairman, UNDC.
Christine Falvo, board member from Rubenstein.
Joel Silverman, board member.
Joseph Vertigliano, board member.
David Mack, board member.
Ed Mermelstein, board member.
Attorney General.
Bob Abrams, board member.
Robert Williamsburger Gray. Pat Valentino, Burger Gray.
Justin Hampton, UNDC.
Are you in DC?
Bill McKay, Corporate Power.
Thank you. At least we should, we're gonna have finance.
George, you want to introduce? I guess on screen. We have-
Oh, I'm sorry. We have on screen.
we might have to introduce you.
Why don't you?
We have Marvin Marcus from Siebert, one of our underwriters. Neil Hood, Reed Frank is our counsel on leases. Scott Gottlieb of CBRE on real estate advisor. Marty Hammond from PFM Investment Management. And let's see, also Allie, she's new on the account from PFM. And Bill Marciano is with our audit firm.
We have two special guests.
2 special guests, right?
Priya.
We have
Yes, good afternoon, Priya Gajraj, UNDP, and thanks for allowing us to join.
And Roy Abernathy, I'm here with Priya, I work for Newmark, and we're supporting UNDP in their consolidation process.
Thank you both for joining. I think you joined on the last meeting. And come again. First item. Hello. Oscar, how are you?
Good, how are you?
You're representing City Planning Commission. I think you came last time also.
Yeah.
So first item on this portion of the agenda, Finance Committee report. Rob? Take it on.
Yeah, I think We met on March 13th with our investment advisor, so Marty Valley. In the board book, there's an agenda for the meeting and an executive summary from PFM's annual report, which goes through kind of the state of the market. Hello, everyone.
And Will James, which joined us. Thank you.
So, their report goes through the various funds under management and market value, yield, duration, et cetera. It's all in the book. In addition, we had an annual investment report that UNBC has every year and gets submitted to New York State. It's something that's approved by the board. And you can see it's in tab 5(i). The corporation's funds continue to be invested exclusively in U.S. Treasury notes. That was at PFM's recommendation with our own finance team. They haven't found too much opportunity beyond treasuries, and especially in the higher interest rate environment. So it shows the current position by investment account. Lou?
Joined by Jessica Healy, member of our board.
Rob, can I ask, I think it's probably a typo.
Yeah.
You take a look at the report to the board on investments, surplus fund category. You've got two entries with maturity dates of 2014 among all the others of 24, 5, and 6. So I think that's a typo.
Yes.
They're two different,
Probably 24,
notes.
2024.
And the only question then, did it affect the second column? Because I have a note, 1,081 days, 729 days. Was it linked together? Is that, it looks like a typo.
it may be two different notes. Are they? They're all, there's our consultant.
I think these
Yeah.
are,
We have different terms.
yeah,
One is 1,081
I
days.
think the 2014 should be 2024.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The term of days would still be 3 years?
yeah, I think the term is right.
Because-
Typically, this fund can go out a little bit longer on maturity.
Because it's in the category with all the 24s, so I.
Correct,
I thought it
yeah,
was just a
thank you.
little Typo.
That
Good
we will
catch.
fix that. Just small print for sure. But these have all kind of rolled over. Like if you look at the debt service fund, those all have short-term maturities because you need to have it available for the next debt service payment every 6 months. So you see those are all in the 5.5% category. And it's a laddered investment approach. So some of the older investments are kind of in the lower interest rate environment. And as they roll over, they're invested in higher interest rate. I could ask PFM to comment.
There are some members maybe on the screen, the total amount that we have in the sense of funds available, $128 million, which is sitting basically all in treasuries. Oh,
Yeah, and that money's been set aside basically, to help fund the project. That we'll talk about later. PFM, Marty, do you want to comment on anything?
Sure.
Can you
Hi,
predict where
Rob.
the markets are going?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll
Maybe
give you
comment on, how you would manage funds from a bond offering into the future, just higher level.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, we've put together a few sample portfolios. We know it's a little early, right? But we put together a few sample portfolios for UNDC's finance staff and working with Chuck as well, who's in the room today. I think as we're thinking about how the portfolios have been managed, they're and I'll get to the bond question, I promise you, the project fund, but we're managing funds. UNDC's portfolios are fully compliant with its investment policy, its bond indenture, New York State investment statutes. So that wouldn't change moving forward. I think when you start thinking about project funds and project spending that could go anywhere from 3 months out to 3+ years. That will provide the opportunity to potentially look at adding some commercial paper, some short-term credit where we're seeing some value in that market, while layering in some short-term federal agencies and some U.S. Treasuries. We've been very careful managing the portfolio over the last year in terms of portfolios not investing funds too long, because we're well aware that if and when the bonds are issued, most or maybe not most, but maybe all of the funds that we currently manage will have some sort of role in being spent through some of these projects that are going to be ongoing. So we've laddered out investments anywhere from really a few months in the case of the debt service fund, but in the R&R and surplus fund out to a maximum of 3 years. Understanding, and they're in all our treasuries, U.S. government guaranteed securities. So being sort of cognizant and aware of not extending too long, given the fact that some of these funds may be spent over the next few years.
Chuck, if you want to give just a
Is that
very
helpful?
quick, yes, helpful. Give a quick summary of what the financing future will be, hopefully, the amounts that we're talking about. Chuck Laban, our advisor from Forsyth and Goldman Sachs.
Forsyth Street
and Seabird. You
in
can-
Vermont, and I'll say just a couple words and let Ben say. So the bond financing team has been working steadily to keep documents going and ready so that bonds are able to be issued when leases are signed. There'll be rating agency presentations next week to start to get both Fitch and Moody's up to speed on the project. When the leases are signed, we'll go back to the rating agencies with completed documents. The sort of interest rates are at least still as of today at their highest point in the last 23 years in the short-term Fed market. And we're prepared, the bonds and the structure is based on today's interest rate environment, so that we're prepared to enter the bond market within 90 days or so after the signing of the leases. All of the necessary steps from the city of New York will take place upon signing of the leases as well. City has committed to commitment to the deal with a backup lease covering a variety of the risks.
The details, I think we're going to go into an executive session. We've always had basically the principal of the corporation, details of lease negotiation, bonding, financing are done in executive session, which we'll go into after we finish the public session. But I thought it would be good the public should hear where we are vis-a-vis financing and the amount of monies.
Anticipate that the project will utilize the corporation's cash on hand, plus a bond issue currently estimated at $335 million.
George, can we get Marty to address Bob's point, just to make sure that this is nothing more than a typo?
Marty, did you hear the question?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I did hear it, and in the great minds think alike, maybe. I'm logging into our system just to reconcile that typo, just to make sure what those are. So if you give me one more minute, I'm trying to pull the December 31st statement just to compare it to UNDC's report here. But I'll have that in probably less than a minute here.
Come back to you.
Okay, thank you.
I have a more general question, but also ties into a little bit to what Chuck was just saying. So, and it's about the investment guidelines. And if you believe that that question should be asked during the executive session, I'm happy to wait, and I'm happy to ask it now.
Fine.
Okay, so Article 5.0 of the investment guidelines calls for, these are my cryptic notes. My question is, are there too many cooks in the kitchen? Investment officer's authority to manage, it's granted to 5 people, 5 staff members of the UNDC. Question is that best practice? Is that the way to be? I mean, it helps you to be nimble in terms of the market changes that Chuck was referencing, but is that the way it should be? Is that the way that our peer organizations do it? Is that okay?
This is a governance question.
The governance question that relates to investment guidelines.
we have a finance committee that meets relating to the investment guidelines. That's made up of some members of the board, besides the investment guidelines, not to say only what the staff.
I'm just reading what it says. So it says that a whole bunch of people can direct investments going left, right, and center. And I'm just saying, is that a good idea?
It's not been the custom. Finance committee does review this and establishes the guidelines, but you're right that it says this.
No, but I'm not asking about, yes, I'm asking about guidelines, but I'm also asking about practice, right? So
This is, the finance committee reviews the guidelines as relates to where the investments go.
yeah, but that's not my question. My question is about who has the right to direct what the UNDC invests in? And this suggests that it's more than one person. And my question to you, is that correct?
It's, it's generally the controller and participation of me. It's kind of in practice, I'll say.
It's not.
Not unusual.
The reality is, the finance committee gives a broad guideline to PFM, and PFM executes that broad
They have a
guideline.
policy, yes,
And
not
they're
right.
only in treasuries, not on your management on this duration
Today,
today, yeah.
and so the broader question is, in a more volatile market than we've seen in 23 years, as it's just discussed, are we, not in your lifetime, but I get of late, and certainly not in mine either, but like, guide us.
I think you're raising a very good technical issue. From what I remember all the years, the finance committee went and is in the discussion of how we invest our funds, in discussion with the controller and these people. But I think it's a legal issue. Is there any state requirement on this?
No, I mean, these were kind of, we had revamped these guidelines a bit, kind of with PFM's involvement for its best practices. I mean, PFM recommends investments to us, to the corporation, and then the controller looks at it with me, sort of how it works in practice. I mean,
Then the finance,
and the finance committee doesn't look at every investment. So
Of course not.
if there's a treasury
reviews
that's rolling over, we don't go to the finance committee and
Right.
say.
Is it okay to, right?
Certainly broad guidance, if we wanted to switch from treasuries to 50% commercial paper, something like that, you'd seek kind of the guidance to do that. But sort of the day-to-day investment programs, it's kind of based on PFM's recommendations, consultation with our finance.
And having multiple officers able to say, yeah, go ahead and support treasuries.
Chuck, what do you think?
It's reasonable practice. Having multiple officers, corporation authorized within the guidelines of the finance committee's policy to authorize the trades, I think is pretty standard. And what Rob described as reasonable
It
practice.
leaves the door open, I mean, this language. Jessica, I understand the question when you read it, okay? Except that practice of the corporation has been that the finance committee basically establishes the guidelines, and then it's left to the investment advisor with corporate offices to implement what the basic policy.
Yeah, I mean, we changed this originally. Now the investment advisor has discretion to actually actively manage a lot of funds.
You visited like a few.
The way it works, actually, is, go send an email to them saying, give us your recommendation as to what we want to invest in. Then they come back and they tell us, well, we do A, B, or whatever it is. And then we make a decision at this point. That's usually it's T-bills.
I understand that.
I think it's a
We've
good
talked
question.
about other investment vehicles. We talked about limits of the portfolio to different. I think you've answered my question. I don't think we need to talk about it anymore.
No, but I think it's a very important question. Policy basically until now has been the treasuries. We didn't have much leeway as it relates to what kind of treasury.
Understood.
Hopefully, most of this money will be spent within this coming year. Once we get the leases going, once we get the construction going, there will be a lot of money being spent.
For sure.
I think it's a good question, and I think we should check legally, technically, is there anything we should be more.
We can have it. I mean, the officers have to act within in accordance with written procedures. So if we want to have a specific,
Understand, and I read the procedures, and the procedure said that lots of people can,
right, but it says the next paragraph, responsibility for operation of the investment program is delegate investment officers who shall act in accordance with established written procedures and internal controls for operation of the program. So you could say, the officer, 3 officers need to sign off and have something like that to kind of further narrow it. We can look at that. Yeah, and
Next item on the agenda is the,
I think we need board approval
Yeah,
for
we
the
need-
investment reports, subject to this, confirming that the 2024 is the correct date.
I have an answer on that, Rob, if you like.
Yeah.
Yep, so I just pulled the statement from December 31st, PFM statement. And the first security on there, everything is correct in terms of the yield. The par amount is correct. That matured on 1/31/2024, so that's correct. It looks like the term is incorrect, so that should be 31 days. And the second security, the US Treasury note with a 0.22% yield, that's correct. The maturity date's correct. The term, the par is correct and the term is incorrect. The term should be 46 days. So maybe there's a, I'm not sure.
But we're questioning that, question is that 2014 date. Is that 2024, 215 of
Sorry,
24?
it's 2024, Joe. Yeah,
Right.
sorry about that. It's 2024. And the one below that is also 2024, 4/30/2024.
And again, the dates, the terms tied in, so that's wrong also. That needs to tie in.
That's right.
well, thank you for
All right,
catching
so we will
it.
correct that.
I didn't hear Bob call.
Your point?
Adopt the report. George, does that need to be corrected to adopt the report?
Yes.
We can adopt it subject to these corrections.
All right, we get a motion on that,
So move, subject to the
Seconded.
correction.
approved. Yeah, I know that's gonna report. Prompt payment.
Prompt payment is, it's the next tab, 5(2). Again, it's a state requirement. The corporation has prompt payment regulations governing how we pay our bills. Generally, it's 30-day payment requirement, or you start to accrue interest. And every year we send a report to the state. Just a 1-page report. Shows which categories we contracted in, and whether any interest payments are made under the prompt payment regulations. So there were none for 2023. And the categories were building and equipment, maintenance and repairs, professional services. That's also an action item.
Questions on it?
Just what? It's out within 30 days from a city government perspective. So I think that's,
It's tight, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
While you're raising a good question,
Yeah.
I want to introduce Ahmed Tigani, who has joined us as
Apologies for being late.
representing the Commissioner of Housing.
Yes.
And let me give you just a little background. He oversees HPP's Office of Neighborhood and Strategies, in addition to financial management, economic opportunity, engineering, audit, human resources, general services.
I also like to make a strong martini on fire.
we'd like to see it.
Experienced urban planner. Prior to HPD, was chief of staff for the commissioner of DOB. These are very large departments. I don't know where you get the time.
The martini, I like it. Keeps me going. It's okay.
Was a bachelor's of arts, and master's of Hunter College. So thank you very much for representing the commissioner. I'm glad that you could make it. Next item is
procurement report. Again, it's a state required report on procurement. It's pretty voluminous and it gets filed electronically. Describes all the contracts and purchases that were made by the corporation during the year or prior years. contract is still in effect. And pretty extensive data gets submitted to New York State. Vendor name, procurement description, the award process, the award date, the amount of contract, the amount spent for the 2023 fiscal year, life to date, then MWBE or WBE. So, this is sort of an excerpted version. It goes to New York State, it lists all the current contracts that are in.
There's one issue to this comment on here that Rob Seibert and I talked about, and that the construction goals, the veterans and all the rest of that stuff should not be, and I've been assured that they are not in conflict with the PLA, which is the Project Labor Agreement, which requires essentially, PLA says you're going to get all union contractors, and as we know, there are very few qualified WBE, SDE, and all that contractors that are union, but Rob has assured me that Turner is focusing on this and is aware of that, and at the moment, there's no direct conflict.
Right.
So there are dollar goals and participation goals both that we must meet as a state?
New York State, they, the way it's done is on a per contract basis. So the state likes to see 30% of any given contract given to an MWBE firm.
So I'm asking, those are dollar goals.
Yes, dollar.
And then there are also labor participation, work, men, women, and other on the site.
Yeah, there are diversity.
Well,
Workforce.
There's workforce hired by New York State through Empire State Development, but there aren't workforce goals with regard to the gender or ethnicity of the worker.
That's surprising.
In other words, vendors and contractors report on the makeup of their workforce, but there are
no stated goals.
There are no criteria.
Interesting. And are the dollar goals best faith efforts?
The MWB participation goal?
Correct.
Yes, we as a state government entity must make good faith efforts, and we must require all our contractors
To do the same.
and to document and demonstrate their efforts.
Thank you.
What differences will there be under the PLA as compared to these goals, if any? No conflict.
The only challenge is if they tend to be smaller firms and more non-union, right? So it's harder for Turner to hit the goals.
Well, yeah,
but through union.
This is a big job, so there's a lot of technical requirements.
So, we have a contract with Turner that says 30% goal. And that's built into their procurement programs now.
Right, but that's including their subcontractors, just like, but
Yeah.
all these that are listed in 5, 3 little I are direct contracts to
Correct.
UNDC. So it's not apples and oranges, it's just a different calculation.
Yes.
Right.
But, all the money flows through Turner, it's construction manager, and they are the ones signing contracts.
Understood.
It's all flowing through.
And they have an officer whose main goal.
Yeah, they
is-
have-
And a whole
The whole
division.
department that
No, I
does
know they
this.
do, but they have an officer on this project.
Yes.
Yeah, they do.
How are they
Okay.
doing? How are they doing?
That's a good question.
We haven't started yet.
Okay.
So far, so good on the MWP goals.
That's easy. That's the easy part. They hit the goal, the
Yeah.
30% overall MWP goal, plus the 6% SDPOP goal, that service disabled veteran
Yeah.
businesses. On the first component. where
Yeah.
that was-
On the first half, it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's a small amount versus the whole.
What they do on the asbestos.
And right, but easier for those trades or more difficult?
On the asbestos.
It is.
How many women did we have working on asbestos?
And a women-owned
I can talk more about that.
asbestos consultant. I know that. And then the contract. George was asking about on the asbestos abatement, how it broke down.
Well, we employed an SVOD contractor, and we paid a premium to do that.
Candy burn.
Right, and we paid a premium in money, we paid a premium in Ryan's headaches.
No, but the consultants are the known firm.
Oh, yeah, no,
JLC,
our abatement our abatement investigator is, that'd be,
And then
We're doing it.
I don't know about the actual.
and our architect is the same, so we're doing what we can,
I'm sure you are.
every week.
The ACM removal company is also WB.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we need approval of the procurement.
Rob, I have a question on this MWB and human business, because a lot of the city agencies, they just put the solicitation for showing the system that they put the solicitation out.
Yeah.
But they keep extending the same contractor again and again for years. Okay, so basically for new startup companies, new minority companies, they don't get opportunities to get at the door. So I just want to know whether our UNDC is having the same kind of policies, because I know MTA.
Yeah.
Yes, David Mack, yes, he's on their board.
Yeah.
See, they have a contract come out, $100 million now, okay, for staffing. And that contract was for 5 years, and they gave this out after 7 years, because people are sitting on the same contract for years and years. So that's what we want to make sure, that this kind of policy should be changed, which can help minority women or new startup companies getting opportunities. They say discretionary bids, but in the discretionary bids, and also they take advantage, the company with $50 million, $300 million company as a minority company. And they should put a cap on this so that, new companies can participate like that. So that's my suggestion, if you got my point.
Yeah, it's about outreach and training and not just beyond the.
Turner has a very substantial outreach program.
Right.
We're out everywhere.
Right.
So people are aware of what these projects are.
SDR. Yeah, I mean, you're right, there are discretionary, and we apply by New York State standards, not New York City. The city has its own program. And there are discretionary where you can award to an MWB firm without going through this process, which we do use. In a bid process, anyone can certainly bid. New companies, and I know state EDC has a very extensive outreach program. For new companies, right? Which they're always.
That's right.
Kind of-
It's tough when it's.
No, it's in order so we can move on.
Right. Pass.
Procurement.
Right, so we need approval for the.
We get approval resolution for the procurement report. Seconded, so moved. Next item on the agenda, the audit committee report. We have with us Bill Marciano and Daniel McKelvey on the Zoom, CIZ Marks.
Hi, good afternoon. Sorry, Dan Mappel, we actually couldn't be here today, but happy to be here with you. In terms of the auditor's report, I'll just give some highlights. We did meet with the audit committee last week and went through a pretty detailed presentation and had some discussions around the audit report as it stands. The opinion itself is an unmodified opinion, clean opinion over the report. We had great cooperation from the staff at UNDC, as we always do. In terms of any type of accounting changes, there were no new accounting pronouncements this year to speak of. And just in terms of internal controls, we had no material weaknesses to report for internal controls. So very good job there. As you probably noticed, looking through the packet and looking through the draft financial statements, there is clearly management's discussion analysis, which was written by Robert and George, that speaks to some of the ongoing factors bearing on the future related to the signing of the lease and the potential financing to finance the costs of the renovations related to those long-term leases that are in there. Other than that, within the
Just one
financial
correction.
statements. Go ahead, sorry.
Marty, signing of the two leases. Not the lease.
Sorry, yes.
Lease with the United Nations and with the United Nations Development Programs.
Correct, very correct. other than that, to be honest with you, the financial statements themselves are fairly consistent, you know, besides the ongoing activities that you currently are aware of. Is there any questions or anything you'd like me to specifically cover?
Any notes that you would bring a highlight to the board that we should worry about?
Sure. Go ahead. Sorry, I heard somebody.
Are there any notes in the audit that you could bring or you would like to bring to the board's attention that may highlight some problems going forward?
Yeah, the only thing I would bring to your attention is, again, within management's discussion and analysis, if you look on page 5 of the actual financial statements themselves, there's some fairly lengthy discussion related to the building repositioning project and some of the contingencies that, you know, come about from the financing that you are trying to obtain and the long-term leases that you are looking to sign and go forward with. You know, in terms of the financials themselves, I mean, everything else is fairly consistent. I will say, you know, obviously with the fact that there is no long-term lease currently as we sit here, we do an analysis to look and see if there's any consideration or problems looking into the future of the corporation meeting its debt service in a go-forward basis. You know, looking at the financial position on the statement of net position right now, the corporation is in a pretty good spot. You have a decent amount of restricted assets or non-current assets that could be utilized to pay debt service in the future. You know, and in terms of cash flows, your operating cash flows were positive in both years, 22 and 23. So as it stands now, just doing that analysis, you know, for auditing purposes, so everybody understands, we look at a period of 1 year from the financial statement balance sheet date. So from 12/31/23 through, you know, projected into 12/31/24 to see what the future debt service requirements are. And if there's enough cash on hand projected based on, you know, expected revenues and expenses going forward. We're not seeing at this particular juncture any issues related to that type of consideration. That was one of the discussion points that came up in the audit committee meeting. Your financials don't contain any disclosures or any information that would allude to a going concern issue or anything of that nature because of that particular reason that, you know, we're not seeing any issue with you meeting your, you know, the debt service requirements. So.
Yeah, just to broaden, I'm a member of the audit committee, just to broaden what Phil just said is that the audit committee asked, and the conversation was based on that we find ourselves in a point in time where the financials of the UNDC look different than they have in the recent past, and even in the not so recent past. And to understand what that means, why that is, we all know why, but to say it out loud, and that we're in a point in time where the financials are captured that reflect a lease change, a great deal of capital expenditure expected and so forth. And that it's important to understand the financials based on that extenuating firm.
To be more succinct, the United Nations gave up for flaws in DC1. So we are reflecting the fact that the corporation has less income. So that's reflected in the differentials between what we had last year and what we have going forward. But that's an issue, 2 issues that I want to take up at the executive committee meeting, because we're coming to the time where there are some major questions that we have to discuss relating to the leases, because it's been the executive committee that discusses this between ourselves. And there are 2 elements here. One, as of March 31st, the leases of the United Nations development partners expires again. It expired last March in 2023. After 40 years of basically of the 2 programs, UNDP was a subtenant or is a subtenant of the United Nations. And we've been having negotiations, lease negotiations, exhibit negotiations in excess of a year. We had a couple of extensions of the lease at the request of the United Nations, and then automatically UNDP was followed through vis-a-vis the United Nations their leases again expire this March 31st. And it's something that I want to take up in the executive committee, how we handle it. What we do vis-a-vis the extensions and the question of the leases itself. And the other thing which I'd like to discuss in the executive committee is pre-purchase of certain items. Please God, as we go along with the development of the projects, there are certain items that have enormous lead times, whether they be cooling towers or switches or electrical components. And we have two choices. We wait until the leases are all signed, which may take a certain period of time and completed. And then we finish up the financing, and then we finish up with Turner simultaneously the contract, the guaranteed maximum. We may lose some time because we will have a serious delay on certain items. So we will discuss in the executive committee the concept of pre-ordering some of these items so that we get a deposit down and we get movement relating to it. We feel comfortable that the leases will be completed. But whatever we're going to do on pre-ordering, whatever these are, this is an asset of the buildings, whether it's a cooling tower or other elements, can always be utilized in the event we have a problem. But that's something we will discuss in the executive committee. We'll come back afterwards, after resolution of the executive committee, to go into the public session regarding those two items.
Phil, on page 12, the difference between 22 and 23 for the line of professional fees, there was a tripling of the professional fees in 23 over 22. Is that the lawyer's negotiation around the lease that
That's
precipitated
exactly
that?
what that is. Yeah, that's professional fees not able to be capitalized that relate to legal. Most legal fees are not capitalizable under GAAP. And then any of the financing, fees that you're going to pay in GASB, which, your corporation reports under, is not a capitalizable item as it is under FASB. So just for anybody that deals with commercial type entities, that is a stark difference in the financials. But yeah, that's the reason for the tripling.
It's
not only
legal
legal
fees,
fees, it's other consulting.
construction, financing, consultants, all the consultants are related.
Yeah, some of them, not, there's a concept of development and progress in here under GASB. You can kind of put some into that category as sort of an asset, non-depreciable asset, which covers kind of the real construction, like Turner and Cosentini Engineering. I think legal and other real estate is not categories under professional fees. So.
That's correct. Yeah. And you would see that on page 19, the development and progress number for 23 was about 6.4 million. So that represents costs that are capitalizable that will be used to hopefully eventually, place your renovations and construction in service.
And that 6.4 million, it also includes the cost for demolition and abatement on 6 floors, at least in 2023. So it's not only professional fees in that number, it's construction as well.
But whatever fees we have, the tenants have it too. And the longer this takes, in principle, the longer the fees will rise, both from the tenant's side and from our side. So it becomes a very important, and it's expensive, but in order to achieve the goal of having these new leases of 15 years plus 2 5-year extensions, which are very important for the corporation, and we believe and we know that it's important for UN and UNDP. So, but we will report on this in the executive committee. So, anything else you want to add, Marty?
Sorry, we were directing to me. No, I have nothing further to add, but happy to answer any questions. That's okay. I answer to anything. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah, but your name is small on there. So,
Phil is actually the new partner on the account, our audit firm. So we really enjoyed working with him this year. And you'll also be involved in the financing as well.
Yes, likewise. Thank you. I think Warren Rupel was here last year. I think you probably don't remember, but he had introduced me. Warren retired as of 12/31/23. So I have the privilege of taking over a lot of his great clients, including the corporation here. So thank you.
Can you, just for the memory of the board, what firms you represent? Your voting firm, similar to what we are?
Sure. So I'm with Meyer Hoffman McCann CPAs, which, if you remember, Marks Paneth was acquired by them and CBIZ. CBIZ is the non-audit or non-attest portion of the firm. So CBIZ and Marks Paneth go together, but Meyer Hoffman McCann is the audit firm that actually signs your opinion. So your opinion on page probably 1 or 2 of the report will have a letterhead on it that'll say Meyer Hoffman McCann, as it did last year as well.
A little background of the firm you represent?
The firm, sure. I mean, the firm has been around for quite a long time, extends beyond me, and we do a number of different government component units, as well as a couple of counties and some colleges within the New York City area. Mainly New York City component units. Also, a lot of the firm does a lot more different work as well, nonprofit organizations, commercial entities, and such. The firm, I guess, if you were to ballpark it into a particular industry, Marks Paneth was known for more real estate accounting than anything else, which kind of goes hand in hand with what United Nations Development Corp does as well. So let me know if that helps.
Thank you.
Quite welcome.
We need a resolution on this. Yes. Audit committee, no. We need a resolution on that.
We do have to approve the financial statements. There are 2 things to point out in the financial statements. Under our leases with the city, any surplus that the corporation has, there's 2 choices. If the board can set aside reserves from that amount for a specific purpose, or if the board doesn't do that, 90% of the surplus gets paid to the city of New York. So given the scope and cost of this project, we're recommending that the board establish reserves. It's about $3.5 million this year, and it's sort of reflected in our budgets that I speak about. We spoke to the deputy mayor. George and I spoke to the deputy mayor on Monday, and they supported that action.
Which we've done for the last couple of years as well.
Typically. So the financial statements include that amount. In note 6, there's a reference to that. Same thing last year. About $6 million was reserved.
Thank you for bringing that to the attention. I move to approve the finance report.
We need approval of the officials as well.
It's a 5 reserve.
And to set
They're-
that's the record.
Okay, so move.
And then we would approve the financial statements. It does have in brackets right now. It's got in the MD&A, we talk about the current expiration of the leases. So in brackets, it says June 30th this year. So subject to our board discussion, executive session, well, ultimately that would have whatever June 30th or some other date that we decide.
The UN has requested a 90-day extension.
Yes.
From March 31st. And that's something that I'd like to discuss in the executive committee. The 90 days. So we will raise it.
Right. So we do need action on the financial statements.
Yeah, so we got a approval on it. Second it. Thank you. So that's approved. And I guess we're done.
Well, there's a management report in here, which I can briefly go through. We talked about the financial statements in tab B. Look, it has the 12-month information on revenue, expenses, and debt service this year and the last year. And the revenues went down. The big point, as George discussed, is effective March of 2023, the UN vacated 12 floors in one. So right now, the building's about 60% occupied. It's mainly UNDP and some missions and a few smaller UN tenants that are occupying the space. So, you had a decrease of 42% in net revenues compared to 2022. And it's countered somewhat by increased interest, about $3.8 million. But overall, that's, that space will have to be released into the future, and some of it will be occupied by the UNDP as swing space while they build out their space. And that's the main reason for the drop in revenues.
I think for a public portion of it, there are serious negotiations, many hours being spent with UNDP, lawyers, staff, and consultants, same with the UN. They both have separate lawyers, so that takes a certain amount of time. From our staff point of view, we've been spending hours and hours just reviewing documentation. But I believe we're mainly on the way. And the assets of the corporation are very secure. We have enough money from its income to pay off all bonds of the corporation, which will be by 2027, 26. And UNICEF, which is the third building across the street, gets possession of its building in 2027. So the main assets of the corporation are these two buildings, which are occupied, mainly one by the UN, the other now 60 or 45% approximately of UNDP. We are discussing with other tenants to make up the space that the UN gave up. And we hope the leases will be done. We will move ahead with the construction. But from the asset point of view, from the corporation point of view, the City of New York owns two buildings, DC1, DC2, with a combined square footage of approximately 800,000 square feet. And I hope, please God, we will finish up within the next 90 or 120 days. There'll be more because of financing to get done with it, but we'll discuss this in the executive session. So, are there any questions?
No, I don't think so.
Any questions on what we discussed till now? I'm sorry it takes long, but the executive session, I hope we'll get it done in a half hour.
Are we going to?
Yeah.
So we're.
I'd like to move that we go into executive session.